Hello and welcome to another screencast with Life at Phuket PALS, teacher Alex here. Today we will talk about life science and life functions and energy intake, specifically about the topic photosynthesis. If you haven't watched the screencast on respiration yet, I'd highly recommend to watch this one and the other one to fully cover this topic. The first question when we talk about photosynthesis is where do organisms get their energy from? And for sure we know this from ourselves and from some close relatives. We have to eat. Also, like this funny guy here on the picture eating a big piece of pizza. Well, this will provide him in the end with energy. So we eat food to get our daily energy needs. A cow, for example, eats a little bit different food. It would eat plants. And we are omnivores. We eat a big variety of foods, meats and plant-based foods. A cow is a herbivore, eating only plants. And that brings us to the question, where do plants get their energy from? Plants don't have a mouth like we do. They don't take in food and eat other organisms like we and other animals do. So how does it work? How do they get their energy? And you've probably all heard of it. They do it by doing photosynthesis. So before we go into detail, let's have a look at the definition of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process by which plants convert light energy into chemical energy. This chemical energy is stored in glucose, which is sugar, which is synthesized from carbon dioxide and water. Oxygen is released as a byproduct. This process mainly happens at the leaves, inside the chloroplasts. And we can see how the different parts needed get in and out of the leaf. Leaves have small holes for gas exchange. And we will look in more detail at this later. So let's have a look at the word itself. Photosynthesis. What does that mean? Photo means light. As when you take a photograph, to take the photograph you need light. Your camera needs light. In the dark it has a flash. To synthesize means to make. And so if we think about photosynthesis, it means the plant is able to make something with the help of light. And what does it make? It makes glucose. In our definition, we had another term, to convert. This means to change something into something else. So again, let's go back to the definition and have a look at the different relations we see here between the terms. One more time, photosynthesis is the process by which plants convert light energy into chemical energy. This chemical energy is stored in glucose, which is synthesized or made from carbon dioxide and water. Oxygen is released as a byproduct. So I highlighted these words in different colors here. Let's have a look at the purple ones first. The purple ones are the reactants of this reaction. We need carbon dioxide and water. The green ones are the products of the reaction, glucose and oxygen. And highlighted in orange or red is the relation to energy. The energy transfer that's happening during this reaction. And this is probably the most important part here, because the plant is able to convert light energy or change light energy into a form of chemical energy. This chemical energy is now stored in the form of glucose, in the form of food, and is available to the plant to be used anytime by the process of cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is the chemical reaction that releases energy from glucose and makes it available for the cells in the organism to use and stay alive. More details to respiration in my other video. Have a look if you're not sure about what respiration is. So let's have one more time a look at the chemical equation, the word equation and the symbol equation of photosynthesis. Simple one, the word equation: carbon dioxide and water make glucose and oxygen. For this to happen, we need light energy and chlorophyll, which we will talk about in a minute. Or the symbol equation: we need 6 carbon dioxide molecules and 6 water molecules to produce 1 molecule of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen as byproducts. So where exactly does photosynthesis happen inside the plant? Photosynthesis happens inside the chloroplasts at the pigment chlorophyll. The chloroplasts are the green cell structures inside plant cells, specifically cells of the leaf. Why are they green? Because they contain the green pigment chlorophyll. The pigment is a substance that has usually a specific color and absorbs some part of the light, as chlorophyll does. So here we have some pictures of plant cells inside a leaf, and we can see very nicely here the little green structures inside the cells, and every single green worm-like shaped dot here is a single chloroplast that is specialized in doing photosynthesis. The chloroplast is a very complex cell organelle. It has several structures. It has 2 membranes, an outer and an inner membrane. The liquid inside the chloroplast has a different chemical composition than the cytoplasm and is called the stroma. Inside the stroma, located, we find disc-like structures, which are called thylakoids, and they organize themselves in stacks, and a single stack is called a granum. Inside the thylakoids we will find the green pigments, the chlorophyll, that are responsible for absorbing the light for photosynthesis. Here another picture, 3-dimensional. Again, we can nicely see the granums, the stacks of the thylakoids located inside the chloroplast in the stroma, inside, covered by the 2 membranes, inner and outer. Okay, photosynthesis in a little bit more detail. Photosynthesis itself is not as simple as we just showed or looked at in a single reaction. Photosynthesis actually happens in many enzyme-controlled steps inside the chloroplast and is specifically split into 2 main reactions: the light reaction and the dark reaction, or the light-independent reaction. As the name says, the light reaction needs light, and it produces organic energy molecules, ATP and NADPH. It takes place inside the thylakoids at the pigments, mainly the green ones, chlorophyll. What ATP is, I talk about in the respiration screencast, so have a look at it if you want to know more about ATP. Summarized, quickly said, ATP is a small, unstable molecule that stores chemical energy. So in this step, the plant transfers the light energy into unstable small molecules in the form of chemical energy. These molecules are ATP and NADPH. They are not stable enough to serve as energy storages, so something else has to happen with them so that the plant can store energy. for transport around the plant and later use at other cells. And this step is the dark reaction. Here, these molecules of ATP and NADPH are used to make glucose. This happens in the stroma of the chloroplasts in many chemical reactions, many small steps, which are all enzyme controlled, and all these steps together are called the Calvin cycle. Into the Calvin cycle goes carbon dioxide, and the energy molecules produced by the light reaction, ATP and NADPH, and their energy is transferred and glucose is produced. The glucose now contains all the chemical energy that was transferred into it from the ATP and NADPH, and their energy originally came from the light. So these two reactions are tightly linked. One more time, the light reaction requires water and produces oxygen as a final product, and as a byproduct or as an intermediate, ATP and NADPH are produced. These are molecules containing energy. They go into the Calvin cycle where carbon dioxide is changed into glucose. Glucose now contains the chemical energy that was previously in the ATP and NADPH and originally came from the sunlight. So what does the plant do with all the glucose? Again, it doesn't have a mouth, it doesn't eat, so it doesn't take in any other nutrients as we do. In our diet, we require proteins, we require fats, we require carbohydrates like glucose. Plants only make glucose. And plants are amazing at making any other kind of nutrient from glucose. So glucose is their basic building block. Plants are able to make other carbohydrates from glucose, like starch. Starch serves as a long-term storage of energy. Is usually stored in seeds or tubers. Tubers are structures, usually root structures, like carrots or potatoes, for long-term storage of energy. For sure, plants don't only need sunlight, carbon dioxide and water. They need as well nutrients and minerals from the soil, specifically nitrates, sulfates, potassium, magnesium. The nitrates and sulfates they need to be able to make amino acids from which they will later make proteins. But again, the main structure to build these amino acids is the glucose. Glucose can as well be changed into sucrose, which is a little bit larger molecule than glucose. Basically, two glucose molecules combined into sucrose. The sucrose is the plant sugar, the fruit sugar, which is used to transport the glucose around the plant and is stored in fruits. Plants are able to make cellulose from glucose, which is the fiber that is used to build cell walls. And plants are able to make oils and lipids from glucose, which are needed to construct cell membranes and serve as an energy storage in seeds. So as we can see, glucose is really the main building block for plants to build more or less everything, with the help of a few mineral salts and nutrients from the soil. Okay, before we finish, let's have a quick look at the connection between photosynthesis and cellular respiration. As I already said, if you want to know more about cellular respiration, have a look at my other screencast. Here we can see that photosynthesis is the reaction of carbon dioxide and water with the help of light energy to produce glucose and oxygen. Cellular respiration is basically the exact opposite. Cellular respiration requires oxygen and glucose and will release the energy from glucose to produce ATP and heat. The ATP can then be used by the cell that did the cellular respiration to perform any other things it needs to do to stay alive or do certain jobs it is required to do. And carbon dioxide and water are produced. So if you remember one of these reactions, you know the other one. You just have to turn it around. As we already learned, photosynthesis happens at the chloroplasts inside the plant cells. The products that are produced, glucose and oxygen, can be directly used in respiration, cellular respiration, which happens at the mitochondria, other cell organelles that we find in plant and animal cells. They are responsible for cellular respiration, for releasing the energy out of glucose. Produced are carbon dioxide and water, which can be recycled by the chloroplasts to perform photosynthesis. Okay, before we finish this screencast, let's have a look at a summary first. So, one more time, photosynthesis is the process by which plants convert light energy into chemical energy. This chemical energy is stored in glucose, which is made from carbon dioxide and water. Oxygen is released as a byproduct. Photosynthesis happens inside the chloroplasts. Photosynthesis is split into two parts, the light reaction and the dark reaction. The light reaction requires water, produces oxygen, and happens at the chlorophyll inside the thylakoids where light energy is absorbed. Produces ATP and NADPH, small energy, unstable molecules. The dark reaction produces the glucose in the Calvin cycle. Many chemical reactions and enzymes are involved here. This happens in the stroma, and the glucose is produced from the ATP and NADPH and serves as an energy storage. The glucose that is produced in photosynthesis in plants is one of the main building blocks for plants to build all other nutrients, such as other carbohydrates, starch, cellulose, proteins, and lipids, some of them requiring additional mineral salts and nitrogen from the soil, specifically the proteins. Okay, let's have a look at some questions before we finish. In every question, you will see a big red question mark on the screen. If you want to think about the question a little bit longer to be able to answer it, just pause the video when you see the red question mark, and when you have the answer, or you think you have the correct answer, you can continue with the video. Okay, question number 1. What are the raw materials needed by plants for photosynthesis? Yes, the raw materials are carbon dioxide and water. We could add light, but again, light is not really a material, it's a form of energy. One more time, let's have a look at the reaction. Carbon dioxide and water produce glucose and oxygen, the products of this reaction. From where do plants get water and carbon dioxide? I think I didn't mention that specifically in this lesson, but I'm pretty sure you know this. Water is absorbed from the soil via the roots, whereas carbon dioxide is absorbed from the atmosphere via the leaves. Alright, question number 3. Where does photosynthesis take place? Now, most parts of photosynthesis take place in the green leaves of the plants, and specifically inside the green chloroplasts of the leaf cells. How is light energy absorbed by photosynthesis stored? The light energy absorbed by photosynthesis is stored in the form of chemical energy in glucose. The main product of photosynthesis is glucose, and glucose contains high amounts of chemical energy. Question number 5. Photosynthesis is split into 2 steps. Which are these steps and where do they take place? Now, this is a bit more challenging question. Take your time. The 2 steps are the light reaction and the dark reaction, or the light-independent reaction. The light reaction takes place at the chlorophyll inside the chloroplast, specifically inside the thylakoids, and the dark reaction takes place inside the stroma, inside the chloroplasts as well. Here again a picture, light reaction inside the thylakoids at the chlorophyll requires water, produces oxygen, and produces the energy molecules ATP and NADPH, which go to the second part of photosynthesis, the dark reaction. Many steps. These steps are summarized as the Calvin cycle. Require carbon dioxide, out comes glucose. This happens inside the stroma. What is the purpose of the light reaction and the dark reaction? The light reaction absorbs the light energy, whereas the dark reaction produces the glucose, a chemical energy store. And that's it from me today. Thank you very much for joining live at Phuket PALS. Today we talked about life science and life functions and energy intake, specifically about the topic photosynthesis. If you're interested to the related topics in this subtopic, life functions and energy intake, please watch the lesson on cellular respiration as well. Thank you very much for joining. This was Alex from Live at Phuket PALS.